So we're sitting here with you two college coaches. Tea for you, Geno. Coffee for you, Joe. Tea for me. You guys have intense jobs. So here's my first question. How many cups of coffee per day, Joe?
Ooh, man. It's the first thing I think about every day is grabbing a cup of coffee. I probably have 2 of these, but then that's it. And once 11 o'clock hits, I'm done. I'm good. I don't drink it after that. But,
Nothing else.
But in the morning, you got to go.
What about you?
I'm a transition guy, so I usually have 1 or 2 teas in the morning, but then I'll shift by lunch. I'm into Dr. Pepper mode, and I'll live on those things. Like
So the leg goes midway through the day?
Yeah, I mean, I've had days where I've down 6 to 10 of those things, and the bottles, the 20. That's not healthy.
You can still sleep at night?
Yeah, no, but I can't sleep at night. That's based on practice film.
I was going to say, do college coaches even sleep at night after a bad game? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Listen, between
After
you
a
two,
good
game.
between you two, it's 62 years of college experience. But you know each other.
Well, the first time I met Coach, I was a player at Ohio University, and we were in Hawaii in the same tournament. And Joe was Speedy Morris's assistant, and LaSalle was really good, and we had a good team. And we got out to Hawaii, and it was one of those tournaments where it was supposed to be UConn to win the whole thing, and we had upset them. And then, LaSalle was, rolling in the, I don't know, were you 8-10 at that time? Or different? I can't remember. They changed the league so often. But they were, they had Kareem Towns, who was a superstar. And we ended up playing LaSalle in the championship. It was supposed to be LaSalle UConn, but we kind of spoiled the parade. But, but it was
happens.
good. Yeah.
So what was the game plan? Do you remember for this guy?
Well, I don't remember the game plan, but honestly, don't let him fool you. Really good player, like a really good player.
Mr. Ohio basketball.
They had a great player on their team. Gary Trent was a great player. But I'll tell you what, Geno was the key to the team, and we kept saying going into the game, the little guy's really good. The little guy's really good. I mean, and our guys, all they wanted to think about was Gary Trent. They didn't realize that the little guy was really good.
Yeah, well, I looked like I should be wrestling 112, so that was a big advantage. So I got to throw
We've said
guys
this
off.
before. Story of our lives.
Yeah. Always underestimated. Rightfully so most times, but that day I happened to have a good game. We had Trent is still mad because literally he won every award that we ever was around. He was player of the year in our league 3 times. And we got in that tournament, and what happened, I just happened to get hot and threw some threes in and scored like 29 or 30 in the game. And so I got tournament MVP, and I was only shooting when he was quadruple teamed. I wasn't allowed to shoot unless he was quadruple teamed. So I lived off Gary's back for a few years. And then he went on. Yeah, he went on to have a good NBA career. And I always think back to playing, and honestly, having coached, and you've done it longer than me, but the highs from playing are exceedingly higher than the highs from coaching. Because when you win a game, there's always things that you could have done a little better, and you're worried about what do we need to do to win on Saturday. There's really I do a bad job of having any, period of enjoyment after wins. I wish I could do that better. I don't know if you're the same way. That's hard.
I was going to say, is that the worst part of being a coach?
No, the losing.
I understand what you mean, though. It's the truth. And sometimes you're just relieved.
Yeah.
Like those games where you're supposed to win, when you win, you don't enjoy them all. You're just, okay, thank God that's all.
Well, your tie is down a little bit.
You're just supposed to win. Yeah. But when you get that great win, it's against somebody you're not supposed to beat. That's that one you can really enjoy.
That one you can enjoy for an hour, and then we're on to the next one. But it's good. And I think that's hard, though. I think that's the hard adjustment as a coach. And as you're in it longer, I found myself now for the first time, my first job at Ohio University, I was 24 years old. I was a recruiting coordinator. I was the young guy. I was put in a position above probably where my experience should have been, but it was where I had played. And I did 1 year of GA. I didn't have to do the film job and the operations job and all those things. I went straight to on the road. Well, now
he was a coach's pet. This guy, Larry Hunter, God rest his soul, was a great coach.
He was a great coach.
But Geno was one of his favorites.
Yeah,
so he took care of you.
Yeah, he did take care of me. He gave me a great start. And
sometimes that's what you need, right? You need the guy that can turn you and you can really do this if you want.
You need a power broker. We all need a power broker to get going with this,
No question. And now, for the first time at 45, I'm the oldest guy on my staff. I literally looking around the meetings. We had a staff meeting this morning. It's like, how am I the old guy? How'd that happen? But I know I look old, but I'm really only 45. License will prove it. I'm not like LeBron, where you're wondering how old he is with all the hair falling out, baby.
Okay, let's transition to LeBron, because Joe has more coaching wins than you.
Oh, yeah.
But you scored more points in high school than LeBron James. Does that give you street cred at all with players when you mention that?
I don't mention that ever. I would be embarrassed to mention that. If anyone saw me play in high school, I passed twice. Once I tripped and fell and shoveled it to a teammate and immediately asked for it back. And the other one, I think I inbounded underneath. Like, I wasn't a big passer in high school. So, and LeBron's life's turned out okay.
Yeah,
I think he's doing well. So he's probably gotten over that.
Yep.
But that's not a big thing that I'm firing off too often.
Well, for the record, you beat him by 34 points. So if he played one more game, this is a different story.
It is a different story. And he was actually suspended for driving a vehicle. I don't think it was my aunt that turned him in, but he did miss a game or two in high school for a suspension for a benefit or possible benefit. So, he probably would have got me, but I didn't. No one gave me a car. Still waiting.
Another thing you guys have in common is your dads were both really big into sports. Joe, your dad spent some time in the Yankees minor league system. Roommate was Whitey Ford.
Right.
What was that like to have a dad hey, had a chance to be one of the Yankees?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of neat. My dad was he was one of those total package guys. He was a college professor. He's a Marine. He's played with the Yankees. So I mean, I idolized my dad. He was great, but he was probably the first guy to make me realize what coaching could do for how gratifying coaching could be.
Yeah.
And don't laugh, but he was just my little league coach. But man, we were the most disciplined, and we never made errors. Like he just hit ground ball after ground ball to us, and we'd throw bunts down, and he just taught me how to win, how to play games the right way, whether it be baseball or basketball.
When you're in practice now, do you say things and go, man, I sound like my dad?
I think we're all a little bit eclectic.
Yeah.
People that pop into our heads, like my dad. I was lucky enough to be with Morgan Wooten at DeMatha High School, and then Speedy Morris was my boss at LaSalle. And I think we're all stealing stuff from other people and making it our own. But things pop into your head, and you realize, hey, you know what? That's something that any one of those three people might have done.
And your dad wrote a book, Sports and Philosophy. He was big into both. Did you read that book?
Read the book, took the class. He taught a class at LaSalle, so I mean, he taught philosophy. So I took one of his courses was like existentialism or something like that. I took that. I thought it'd be neat.
How'd you do in that class?
My mom had to grade the paper so I passed. Then he also started a class called Philosophy of Sports.
Right. Yeah.
Sold out. I mean, it was like not sold out, but filled out right away. You couldn't get in because and he made it fun, and everybody took it, and everybody got a B. So it was good, but it was kind of neat. He was kind of ahead of his time with that stuff.
Yeah, but what was the class about? What was his philosophy and sports and merging the two? Because it was probably a little bit ahead of his time.
I think it was. The one thing I'll never forget, he kind of started the class out by saying that sports and athletics provide the greatest opportunity for the greatest amount of people to achieve or witness human excellence. So that's embedded in my head. And I think that was the premise for the whole class. That, sports is a microcosm of our society, and everybody's if they're involved in sports or not involved in sports, they all relate.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Sports is the best human drama on TV. It's reality TV before we had reality TV because you don't know the ending. These are real life people playing real life games, and for you, Geno, your dad was your coach. So
which is why he shot so much.
Right.
Absolutely.
So Sonny Boy had the green light every time.
Shot so much.
My college teammates accused Larry Hunter of being my dad because I shot so much in college too. But to be honest, very impactful. Odd going into the season because my dad passed away in June.
Right.
And this is really not that we would talk every day about games or preparation, but I've spent more time thinking about his coaching and teaching in the last 4 to 6 months, and I guess that's just because you're going into your first practice, and that would be a conversation you'd usually have with your dad. Hey, how was the start? Well, we're doing this, we're doing that, and so that's been an adjustment, and not in a good way, but I think a lot of the stuff that he always got guys that they liked to play for him. They really, really liked playing. And I think there is real value in the experience of the athlete. And not that every day is going to be, a hug and a pat on the back and a man, thanks for trying. But, there needs to be some shared suffering and some failure and some difficulties to really bring a team together. But I think back to a lot of the ways he tried to build a team, and I think more of that than any, offensive concept or, plays. My dad was not bright enough, eclectic. I don't even know if I could spell that. I know my dad and I probably would have needed some help, but we were not college professors. That's a different level. But my dad was teaching current issues at the high school. And true story about my dad, really quickly. So when I got to high school, when I was a freshman, a lot of the students were really nice to me. And we grew up in a poor town. And I never understood why, because when you come in as a freshman, you expect the older guys to pick on the freshmen at the high school. Small town, and that never happened. And I never could figure it out. And then I later on really understood that my dad was teaching current issues, and literally every single student was getting an A. He would just make them do enough so he could justify giving them an A. And I asked him one time, I said, why in the world are you giving A's to all these guys? Like, some of these guys are getting F in English, F in math, F in science, A in woodshop, A in woodshop, and A in current issues. And he said, you know why? He said, because all those kids are getting A's in English and science, they leave our town, and all the kids that are just do well in woodshop, those are guys I'm going to live with the next 40 years. So I want to make sure they take care of me. So he always tried to do the extra to make sure kids got the material and did well. And I don't know if they were all earned A's or not, but he handed out a lot of good grades.
And now you both have sons that have gotten into coaching. So you've a little bit come full circle now. What advice did you give your sons getting into this game?
Wow. It's a catch-22. I mean, because
it really is. I can imagine.
I'm so proud that they're doing what they love to do, and at the same time, I hope it works out for them. It's tough business. I mean, it's a tough business.
It's a
tough
grind.
to get a start. My son Joey's an assistant coach at the University of Pennsylvania. My son Matt's a prep school coach at Avon Old Farms up in Connecticut, and my son Tony's a track coach at George Mason. So. But I mean, I think you just have the regular conversations like, and I would say to my wife, Mary, all the time, I'm not sure I wanted to be a college coach. I'm not sure. And she finally, it was like a slap in the face. She didn't slap me in the face, but it was like that. But she said, hey, it's not what you want. It's what they want. So I'm proud that they're doing what they want to do. They love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to sound like a parent. I think they're pretty good at what they do. That doesn't mean it's going to work out, though. So just say my prayers and eat my vegetables every day and hope it all works out for them.
What's the hardest part of watching your son try and make it? When you want to be able to help him, but at the same time, you probably want to go, hey, you got to figure this out on your own.
One of the things is seeing people that, again, sound like a parent. They aren't as good as your kids getting jobs for whatever reason. The reason people get jobs is, you just can't. It's in a very inexact science, and so you see your guys trying to advance, trying to get ahead. Your son, you were saying, is a GA now, right?
Akron, yep.
I mean, it'll help that he's got the lineage.
Yeah, but I think the
hard,
challenge, I literally, you could probably have hit record and just play back my answer, because I 100% couldn't agree more with everything he just said. I struggled with my son. I didn't really want him to go into coaching because I know the difficulties, and there are a lot of coaches that I have tremendous respect for that never got a break. And I coached Division III. And when I coached Division III, a couple of those guys, their teams were so fundamental and well coached. I would honestly sit here.
You knew that they could go and make it. You knew.
Yeah, it's from a coaching standpoint, 100%. They may not have had the sizzle of a press conference. They might not have someone on their resume that can push them for a job.
Yeah.
But we've done this long enough. There are some. I'm not. Hey, hopefully no one's saying this about us. But there are some schools where they're in power conferences and you play them, and they do nothing that you haven't 100% seen before, and they don't necessarily do it any better than anyone else. But they happen to have some McDonald's All-Americans and top 100 players, and the reputation is, Joe Blow is a terrific coach. And when you really get into the film, it's like, I don't know. They're not doing anything to make our lives difficult other than we can't match up with the size and length at that spot. And so recruiting is an enormous piece of this.
Right.
And so I think to Joe's point of it's an inexact science. You have to work really hard. You have to do a great job, and then you better get lucky.
You gotta get lucky.
And in my case, Sean Hilbrun gave me an unbelievable opportunity. He could have hired 1,000 different people, and it's not lost on me that every day I go to work, I better work as hard as I can and bust my rear end so that he made a good decision. Because there were a lot of choices he could have made, and you'd be sitting with somebody else other than me.
You look at the coaches that are at the NC, the North Carolinas, the Dukes, the Syracuses. Do they have it easier or is it tougher for them because there are expectations on them to maybe keep that sustained momentum growing for a program that's been so good for decades?
Well, some of the other points that you would make about those schools, they buy 6 wins, sometimes 9.
Yeah.
They buy those wins. So even a team in the bottom of the Big Ten or the ACC, they're going to start the ACC conference play like 10-3.
Yeah.
Because
So the foundation is
bought
set.
8 wins.
Right.
And then they're just trying to finish up 16 or 15 and maybe get in at large. So do they have it harder? Well, I mean, they have to win some games, but there are reasons it's hard. There's reasons that they have some benefits too.
I think the hard part probably is recruiting. I think the pool of players that we can get and win with in our leagues is a little bigger than the pool of players they can really win with. But if you get to the actual coaching, or the team, not to be negative, but the buying of wins, the confidence that builds in guys, and then you're literally just trying to go 500 in your league. That's their whole year. They go 10-3, 11-2 non-league. Most of them
There's your
don't play
23
any
wins
games
and
a
you're
week.
6th place and you're in.
And you're in easily. Yeah, no question. And we don't live in that. For us, one loss can change your whole year. Now, that loss could be conference tournament. It could be, you look at Monmouth, what they did a few years ago. I mean, all the success they had and they didn't get in. And, it was like your 25 or 26 wins, it wasn't enough because they were saying, oh, well, you lost to a team that was 300. Well, sometimes I've seen scores where sometimes Syracuse or whoever may lose to a team they're not supposed to, but it doesn't seem to be the same level of detriment to their chances to get in as it would be to ours.
What about the fact that you guys play at schools where if you do make that run to the NCAA tournament, it changes the mood on campus. It changes everything. It can change the fortunes of the enrollment the next year.
Sure.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's why we do what we do. I mean, it's to get that ultimate win. So, yeah, and when that happens, you're so happy for the university, more than yourself, well, maybe not more than your players, but you're just so happy for all those loyal season ticket holders and donors and boosters and the administrators have been there forever. And there's so many people that it's why you play.
Yeah.
You
You did it at
play for
Niagara.
them.
What was the best part of that moment when you did it at Niagara?
Yeah, well, it was surreal. It was surreal. I mean, they hadn't been to the NCAA tournament in like 30 years. And so when we went, it was like, I get chills every time I think about it. I mean, so many people were so happy. And, again, it's why you do what you do.
Yeah.
So, it's great.
How do you convince, going back to recruiting, how do you convince the kid that might have an opportunity to go to that bigger school? How do you sell them on, if you come to our school, it's a better opportunity? And it's hard because they see, the Big Monday team or on ESPN, but how do you sell them and go, no, come here, trust me, it's better for you?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that go into that. I think the academic piece, certainly at our place, it's an elite academic school, a meaningful degree. I think you get into the basketball side of things and it becomes playing time. Everybody thinks you're going to play at whatever level they go to, but the bottom line is the numbers don't bear that out, and the transfer portal numbers don't bear that out, that most guys are going and they're not playing as much as they want and they're transferring to a spot where they can make a bigger splash. And I think that it's fit. I think that, we've had guys that we've gotten that have had opportunities, and we've lost guys that, decided they could go maybe play in the A-10 or the Big Ten. I think that's an inexact science. You're just trying to connect with the kid because every situation's unique, and what might excite you about an opportunity to come to Stony Brook is going to be different than the next guy, be different than the next guy. We got to find what that is and really paint that as the big picture item. And I think you're trying to sell what they want to buy.
Yeah, I say a lot of the same things. I think Stony Brook is the second best school on Long Island, academically. But I think what frustrates me is, we can point to Speedy Claxton and Justin Wright Farmer and Charles Jenkins and say, what, you want to be in the NBA, right? Well, how much better can you do than those guys? They all got drafted, they're in the NBA. Go to a big school, you might get lost. I mean, all those same things. Lately, the thing that frustrates me the most, not that it's a new thing, it's the peer pressure. Like a kid has to be able to tell his buddies, I'm going to Hofstra or Stony Brook. I'm not going to Maryland. I'm not going to Ohio State.
Yeah.
That, and they know they should. They know they should come to one of our schools. They know they should come to our level. But they just can't tell all their buddies, can't tell their teammates. So if you recruit a kid no names mentioned. I remember recruiting a kid last year. I'm sitting in his high school gym, and next to him, this kid's going to Villanova, one of his teammates. This kid's going to go to probably Notre Dame. He was an underclassman at the time. This kid's going to Maryland. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. He can't turn to his buddies and say, I'm going to Hofstra.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, I'm going to Notre Dame. I'm going to Maryland. He can't do it, and that's frustrating. And this kid, one of many, just knew. He knew he should have come to school like ours.
Yep.
And just couldn't do it. Couldn't pull the trigger.
Now you do sometimes catch, the rebound effect, and so I'm sure they've done it as well. Sometimes you recruit a guy knowing that the peer pressure is a real thing, and that I think it depends on the amount of external people involved. I feel like
which in today's day and age, let's be honest, there's a lot more than you all have to deal with.
First thing you got to find out.
Right.
Yep.
Is he going to listen to mom or dad or uncle or brother or coach or AAU coach
or personal
or
trainer
girlfriend? Who you listening to?
Yeah. That's the biggest piece of it. I mean, there's no doubt, and there's no secrets in coaching. I mean, you can tell we do a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
When we're recruiting a kid, we go in, we're trying to learn that stuff, and sometimes we just say, hey, we're going to go after this guy, we're going to recruit him really hard and make him a priority, knowing that we probably aren't getting him, but we might get him in 2 years.
Right.
And because the
you're trying to make the good
work.
second impression.
Yeah.
We tell our assistants to save the phone number.
Save the
Save
phone.
that
phone number.
Don't delete that
I
contact.
love that. That's great.
Save the phone number.
That's great. What is the state of youth basketball nowadays?
I think it's good. It's like so many other things in life.
It changes.
90% of it's really healthy and really good, and there's 90% of the AAU coaches are awesome guys doing it for the kids. Kids are having a great experience, but it's those 10% that kind of give it a bad name.
Yeah.
You and I both know so many great guys are AAU coaches, but we also know the guys that are.
Yep. Little maybe in it for their own deal as opposed to the kids. I think the thing that I don't like about it is all the travel. Here's why I don't like it. We have to travel a lot in season. When they go play and they take a cross-country flight and play in a tournament for the week, they play at 8 a.m., they play at 1 p.m., they get beat, and they're talking about, when we play again, we play at 7. We get beat. They get beat in the opener. We have to live with that for 4 days, 5 days.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little desensitizing of losing because of the system. But that's not an indictment on the coaches or the kids. That's the one part of the system I don't love because I do feel like I distinctly remember as a player not eating after a game that I literally cost us. I was Illinois State. I should be in the Illinois State Hall of Fame for as bad as I played against them one night. And you just want them to soak it in, and not that you want them to be miserable, but I mean
to not enjoy the feeling you want them
to certainly not be on to the next page quite as quickly. It's okay to.
They lose the value in winning because and it leads to another thing pretty much the same topic, same area. If they are on an AAU team, right, and they're not playing, they just switch teams.
100%.
And that began high school. Same with high school. Not playing at DeMatha, I'm going to go to High Point.
And let's clarify, this is all over. This is in every sport nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. Right. It becomes easier at our level to say, I didn't get the minutes or I'm not scoring as much as I thought I would. I'm going to transfer because I've already changed teams 20 times in my life because I did go to the first tournament with Team A. I didn't start, and I just the next weekend switched over and played for your team. Yeah. And so that's already happened, and it's normalized, I guess. And so those are that's a great one. But those are the two things that I think are really challenging with youth sports. Just the kids not being desensitized to losing and persevering because the days of a guy coming into our program. Not redshirting, not playing, working really hard in the weight room, working really hard in the gym.
Instant gratification.
And then year 4, a pretty good player, and year 5, a starter and an all-league guy. Those stories seem to be dwindling because usually they don't want to stick it out all the way through. And I think that makes our teams worse because then we just get a new guy, and I don't care. Generally, regardless of talent, experienced junior is usually better than a freshman, particularly in November. It may not be the case as the year goes on, but early, those older guys help you win.
Yeah, we call those kids runners. They're taught to run. Freshman year, you didn't play, transfer somewhere else. Some kids go to 3 or 4 high schools, and then they they're taught to do that.
Yeah.
They're taught to transfer.
So what's the advice for parents, Joe, as they want to try and groom the next great college player? I think it's simple. Just listen to your kid,
Tough
right?
love. I mean, if you really love your kid, you want them to learn some adversity. You want them to learn how to work hard, and instead of like, hey, you know what? It's not your fault. It's the coach's fault. Let's go to another AAU team. Let's find another high school. It's just. It's not like it used to be. It really isn't.
No.
Your dad wouldn't. My dad. Are you kidding me? My dad said, "You want to play more? Work hard."
Yeah.
Simple as that.
I distinctly remember my freshman year of college calling home one time early in the season. I wasn't playing well, and like all kids, I mean, I'm away from home, and I'm used to scoring a lot, and all of a sudden, I'm not sure if I'm the backup point guard, if I'm going to get in. And I called and said, I don't even get the full sentence out of my mouth about practice not going well. He said, well, sounds like you shouldn't be talking to me. You should be in the gym. And he hung up on me. And I was holding a dead telephone line.
Yep.
Well, you know what? He was right. And the answer was I did get in the gym, and then I ended up playing. It doesn't work out for everyone. But I think as a parent, balancing, hey, if it's a situation where the kid's genuinely not being treated fairly, that's one thing. We're not talking about those instances. But the instances where it's just easier to run to the next opportunity, it's not always better. It's not always better at the next stop.
Yeah. You've been in the game for so long, so let me ask you, smartest coach you coached against in your career?
Geno Ford.
I couldn't even get Joe Mihalich out of my mouth fast enough.
Man, that's really hard answer.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so
hard.
many. There used to be some bad coaches out there. This doesn't exist anymore.
Now, the
There used to be
internet's
one-
heard that. Yeah, there's more
There
stuff
used to
out
be
there.
one or two teams in your league. You're like, you know what? They ain't ready. He didn't get them ready. They're not doing anything on offense. They're not doing anything. Yeah, that's an when there's been the list could be. I would answer it this way. We could give you a couple of names, and you tell us who we forgot, because there's so many great guys.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
No
It's
doubt.
just-
It's hard because I think the longer you're in it, the more you realize how good of a job certain guys do. Most people have experienced it both ways. Most people have won championships and potentially even finished last a time or two or come close.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, I'm not a believer that they hit their head in the shower and forgot the offense from a year ago. It's generally the pieces of the team. Could be a selfishness issue, could be we just don't have enough shooting issue, could be an injury, whatever.
It's just not clicking.
Just not clicking.
Yeah.
And some groups of people don't work as well together. And in our business, there are no trades. Who he has on his team right now, who I have on my team, that's what we have. That's it. Now, you can make an alteration in April, but for right now, we have our groups. And it's about building that team for 1 year. And I think there are certainly a lot of guys that you have a ton of respect for. And there just aren't a lot of bad ones. I think that's the reality. And there are some guys that haven't won a ton that I literally have hated playing against because of just the way they defended and sucked the life out of the game and, were difficult to prepare for.
We're almost done. Let me ask you about the hot topic right now with the NCAA is these laws that are being passed where athletes might be able to cash in on their likeness. I don't know how much it would affect you guys and your schools, but it certainly could affect the game. Just give me your thoughts on what it could do to the NCAA.
I love the charm of amateur sports, and every step we take towards not having this be an amateur feeling. I know our guys are getting a scholarship. I get all that. But any step we take towards this not being an amateur, an amateur sport, an amateur experience, I don't think it's what we're all about. I mean, they're still in school. They're still trying to get to be professionals. It's why you go to high school and college. Maybe you're going to be a professional. Maybe you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, but you're still working your way towards that. And I just maybe I'm slow to understand change and laws and all that stuff. But
Well, on my side, I think the people that should be adamantly against it, honestly, are the non-revenue sports. They are potentially women's sports. Like, there's not enough money. Like, at the end of the day, there's only so many dollars coming in terms of sponsorship.
Right.
So if Company A decides to sponsor you instead of the department, and I'm not against the players, I'm not. But I think if that money's coming from somewhere. So when that money comes out of the total athletic department budget, schools are not going to quit having men's basketball and football. That's got to come from somewhere. And I think it's going to be at the detriment of some Title IX situations. I think it's going to be at the detriment of non-revenue men's sports. The budgets are the budgets. You can't just, because ultimately the companies aren't going to increase what they're giving. I'm going to give the starting quarterback at Ohio State X number of dollars and just continue to give the department the same money. They didn't go up in sales at a rate that would justify that. So I think from an economic standpoint, there's some real challenges with this.
I always like to end these conversations by asking everyone the same question. You go back when you start your career, what advice would you give yourself if you could go in a time machine?
Well, I'll remember. I always refer to the advice I got from Morgan Wooten. Now, you know who Morgan Wooten is. Morgan Wooten is the greatest coach of all time.
Hall of Famer, I believe.
John Wooden called him the greatest coach of all time. So when I was right out of college, I'll never forget this. He brought me into his office for the first time, and he was smoking cigars at the time, and it was just a cloud of smoke in there. And I was all excited because I thought, like, here we go. He wants to know what I think about, our full court press or playing our man-to-man offense.
He's picking my brain.
That's
all right.
Yeah, and so I went in there. It was just a one-on-one, and all he talked about was be yourself and be loyal. And it's the best. It's the best advice you can give anybody. You can teach them how to coach. You can teach your assistants how to coach. You can teach your sons how to, but you have to teach them how to be loyal to whoever it is. People you work for, people you work with, be loyal. And be yourself, because when we're working with young people, they know when you're not being yourself.
Yeah.
They know when you're trying to be Bobby Knight. They know when you're trying to be Dean Smith. They don't want that. They want authenticity. They want you to be yourself. So that's the advice I gave my sons, and I hope it works out.
I think looking back, it's kind of funny because when you're young and coaching, you have all the answers, but the reality is you only know one way to do most things. Like ball screen coverage, I knew one way to cover ball screens. Now I know 8, and I can spend all day debating on which one we should use. and the decisions, I think being convicted to what you really believe in, because as you expand in any career, you see more ways that work. You also see more ways that don't work. You better stick to who you are and have confidence and convictions in what you believe, and that's got to be your system. And I don't think you can get caught in the middle of you try a little of this, you try a little of that. I don't think that works in basketball. I think you specifically have to be who you are to that, and whatever you really, really believe in, teach that to the best of your ability, and the team will reflect that. Because if either one of us go to practice today and try to emphasize 7 things that they're going to get better at and we're going to get better at, we're going to get better at 0. It's got to be pinpoint, this is the focus, this is what we're doing, and be great at that, and that's usually good enough.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll see both of you on the basketball court then, all right?
Thank you.
I'd rather
Thanks,
stay
Joe.
here than go back.
You guys want
I'm
pancakes?
a lot
What do you
more
want?
relaxed right now.
You want 3 orders? Come on over. We can do that.
Thanks, Kev. Thanks for having us.
That was great.
Fun.
Awesome.
Good to be with you.
That was good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed
All right, bro.
it. Thanks.
That was great.